Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the LaRouche Organization Friday Night Symposium. Today is December 5th. Today is December 5th. I'm Diane Sayre, and shortly we are going to go to a video interview that I conducted 2 days ago with the Dutch journalist Sonia van Ende regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict and her experience as a journalist. You'll hear from her that she actually arrived in Russia in 2022, just when Russia's special military operation was beginning. She traveled to the Donbass, she traveled to Mariupol, and then received word that I think her assets had been seized, bank accounts, etc., and that it probably would not be wise for her to return to Holland. She was placed on the Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation kill list, the Marotvorets kill list. I met her at a symposium or forum organized by the Schiller Institute. I can't even remember the topic. We share much in common in the quest for peace. Now, before we go to that interview, I just want to share a couple of developments, very good, and then perhaps some ominous. But one, I am excited that perhaps we are going to get a renaissance of classical culture coming from all places, the Catholic Church. First of all, I got news a couple days ago that the Ratzinger Institute, that's Pope Benedict, who came in, I think, in 2011, they have just given their award to someone who contributes greatly to culture or theology, to none other than the conductor Riccardo Muti, who directed the Chicago Symphony for many years. And I think that's very exciting. And apparently Pope Benedict also was an avid pianist who loved Mozart. Then I heard that the current Pope, Leo, had given a speech which we didn't hear of, at the time in June of this year, celebrating the 5th centenary of Giovanni Pierluigi de Palestrina. Now, as a trombone player, I can tell you brass players play a lot of Palestrina. Trombones in particular were primarily a church instrument for many years. He's a wonderful polyphonic composer, and very early on. And in his comments, Pope Leo said the following, quote, "Polyphony itself is a musical form full of significance for prayer and for the Christian life. First of all, it is inspired by the sacred text, which it proposes, quote, to clothe with suitable melody, unquote, so that it may better, quote, reach the understanding of the faithful, unquote. Furthermore, it realizes this goal by giving the words to several voices, which repeat them each in its own way, with complementary melodic and harmonic movements. All is harmonized thanks to the expertise with which the composer develops and weaves the melodies together, respecting the rules of counterpoint, making each one an echo of the others, and at times creating dissonances, which then find resolution in new harmonies. The effect of this dynamic, unity in diversity, a metaphor for our common journey of faith under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, is to help those who hear to enter ever more deeply into the mystery expressed by the words, replying where opportune with responsories or in alternatim. Thanks precisely to this richness of form and content, the Roman polyphonic tradition, besides leaving us with an immense patrimony of art and spirituality, continues to be, even today in the field of music, a reference point to be considered with due modifications in sacred and liturgical composition, so that through music, The faithful may participate fully, consciously, and actively in the liturgy with profound involvement of the voice, the mind, and the heart. Very beautiful remarks. And of course, we know that Bach signed many of his compositions to the greater glory of God. But think about it, in this dark age with so much ugliness and no standards and everything goes, and there's your truth and my truth and his truth and her truth, and beauty is whatever you say it is, and I can vomit on the, out on the street corner and somebody else will consider that art. It's refreshing to have a standard spoken of by the first American Pope. And this is after he made those remarkable, or before actually, but we just found it now. But, interestingly, he also commented on the work of Nicholas of Cusa, someone whom Helga Zepp-LaRouche studied for many years, and many of us in the LaRouche movement have studied as well. He was really the pioneer and founder of modern scientific method. Now, speaking of Cusa, the coincidence of opposites and polyphony, the other very exciting breakthrough is that President Putin, who of course said at a conference that the world should act to the relations among the world should be as those in a symphony orchestra, different instruments, different voices contributing to a unified polyphonic whole. Putin has been visiting India, a nation of 1.4 billion people. And I wish Americans would consider that nations which have 1.4 billion people, like China and India, can be great partners for the United States. If we had good economic relations with them, that would be an enormous market for American goods, excepting we don't produce that much. But we could change that, of course. So let me tell you a little bit about what Putin and Prime Minister Modi were discussing. India and Russia signed a memorandum of understanding for cooperation in the port and shipping sector, but also President Putin said that Russia is committed to trade between India and Russia increasing to $100 billion a year by 2030. And he also announced, quote, "We are building the largest Indian nuclear power plant in India's Kudankulam area, 2 of 6 units. This is a 6-reactor nuclear power plant, huge. And Russia's building a nuclear power plant, as people may know, in Egypt, which has 4 reactors, which is coming along as well." He said, "We are also exploring small modular reactors, floating nuclear plants, and non-energy nuclear technologies in medicine and agriculture. A large Russian-Indian pharmaceutical plant will be set up in the Kaluga region to produce high-quality anti-tumor medicines using advanced Indian technology." And he said, "Russia is a reliable supplier of oil, gas, coal, and everything that is required for the development of India's energy. We are ready to continue uninterrupted shipments of fuel for the fast-growing Indian economy." Now, remember, some months ago, President Trump threatened 100% sanctions against India if they would not stop purchasing Russian oil and gas. And I forget who it was, but in the course of these meetings, somebody made the point, why should the US demand that India stop purchasing Russian oil and gas when the United States itself is purchasing uranium from Russia? Very good question. And there are other questions that Sonia adds in the interview, which I'll get to otherwise. So we have the situation around Venezuela, where Defense Secretary, now known as Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, either did or did not give orders to do a double tap strike, killing the passengers of a small boat that was allegedly going to make a long trip from Venezuela to the United States. Highly doubtful just on the face of it that a boat that size could even travel that far. It would need an awful lot of fuel. It's just ridiculous. But the boat was bombed, and then 2 passengers were clinging to the flotsam and jetsam, and somebody ordered another strike. Admiral Bradley was the commander of that deployment, but was it Hegseth? Was it Bradley? Hegseth first claimed not to know. Then we read this morning that Bradley was going to testify in front of a closed congressional hearing that the reason that the second strike was warranted is that the 2 men clinging to the edge of the boat to avoid drowning were intending to continue their drug running mission. Now, this is completely absurd. And Venezuela is not the biggest producer of drugs. It is responsible for maybe 8% of the illicit drugs that hit the United States. Colombia, much larger, and a lot goes through Mexico. I don't know from where, and frankly, a lot of material comes through Canada. But if you really wanted to stop drugs, you could do it very easily by going after the money. The money, Wall Street, who launders all this money? This is a huge business. This was one of the things that got Lyndon and LaRouche in trouble early on, was his book, Dope Incorporated, naming the names of the banks and others that run the drug trade. But let me stop here. I will bring up this interview, which I think will give you some sense of what's going on in the efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. I think it is very promising that Marco, otherwise known as Narco Rubio, did not attend the summit of NATO foreign ministers 2 days ago. I think it's very good that Keith Kellogg is out of the way. These two have been really terrible in sabotaging President Trump's efforts to get peace in this area. And Steve Witkoff, as people may know, had a 5-hour-long meeting with Kirill Dmitriev of the Russian Direct Investment Fund and President Putin. And clearly they are getting closer to what could be the terms of an agreement. But as of yet, they have not reached an agreement, but I think more will come. And President Trump finally has been sounding very clear on this, saying again to the Ukrainians that he was right when we told you that you didn't have any cards. You could have ended this a long time ago. When I first came in, it would have been a good time to end this war. Then you didn't do it. You've lost a lot more men. You've lost a lot more land. Time to stop now. And frankly, the U.S. should therefore stop shipping weapons to Ukraine and stop selling them to the silly European nations. But I won't tell you more about that because you will hear it from Sonia van den Ende herself.
Well, good evening, good morning. I am Diane Sayre, doing an interview for the LaRouche organization. And with us today, independent journalist Sonia van den Ende, who is currently in Russia. She is a geopolitical analyst who writes for various publications, no longer in the West, I'm afraid, generally because of their lack of commitment to telling the truth about anything going on. And I came to know Sonia, I guess, on a few calls of the Schiller Institute, but particularly we have had the honor, I'll call it that, to be named in the same Ukrainian hit lists for spreading, quote unquote, disinformation and Russian propaganda, because it has been the case that anyone who said that Ukraine was not going to win the war and could not win the war, and that NATO provoked this whole operation by its aggressive actions, was labeled as a Putin sympathizer, Russian propagandist. Now I think some of that facade is falling by the wayside. It's sort of undeniable that Russia is not going to lose a war with Ukraine. And I think I'll just leave it at that and ask you, Sonia, please to introduce yourself to people watching and take it from there. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me for this interview. Well, my name is Sonia van den Ende. I'm a Dutch journalist and a geopolitical commentator. I worked for several media in the West, in the Netherlands and Belgium. But unfortunately, also just to mention that I was a member of the Dutch Socialist Party until 2015. Then I was kicked out because then the whole thing started with Syria. So, I mean, then it was not, yeah, very appreciated. When I came back from my travels there, I told them, yeah, what I saw. And this was, of course, not the policy of the West, my country, the Netherlands. So then actually started, the special military operation started in 2022. And I was invited for a conference in Moscow. So I went, it was supposed to be 2 weeks. And while I was there, the airspace was closed because of the sanctions. So they told me, please stay. And well, there's opportunity. You can go to the Donbass to see for yourself what is going on. So I said, okay, I'm waiting, so I will do that. So I ended up actually going 10 or 12 times after that and reported from cities like Mariupol, Volnovakha, Melitopol, and many other cities, Kherson. And while I was there, it was May 2022, I was put on the Miro Vorets dead list, like you are, and we all are when we are speaking positively about Russia or visiting the Donbass. So, okay, then I came back and they told me, well, it's better you stay here because it's not only you've been put on this dead list, it's also MI5, MI6 in Britain, your own country, the Netherlands might, yeah, don't know, they can do something against you. So already my bank was closed and all these kind of things, property, thank God I was on time to sell it, and but they would confiscate it, and so all these things.
Wow.
So I ended up in Russia, and actually it's very good. So I'm here already 3 years, and well, used to the situation here, and that's okay. So actually, that's my little bit my story as how I ended up and what I'm doing now in Russia.
Wow. Well, it seems like we could discuss both the lack of true, serious journalism in the West, which is really a problem because I found, I ran for U.S. Senate twice, and you it would be easy to say, well, the American people are just dumb or they don't care. It's not really that. And I think it's similar in Western Europe, although I don't think it's hard to tell. I think in Western Europe, there's more of a social safety net. So people are struggling. They have 2 or 3 jobs. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford to buy a new car. They're getting foreclosed upon. And they don't have time to dig and do research and try and figure out what's going on. And I had even very intelligent people in my family who are mostly, my family is medical doctors. I'm the black sheep here. So asking me, well, what is happening in Ukraine? Why is Putin invading, this kind of thing? And I realized why they consider. I think that was a big miscalculation of NATO, by the way, that they thought they could win the war in the information sphere, but they weren't prepared for a kinetic war. But I would like some comments on that. And then I would like you to please tell people what it was that you saw when you went to the Donbass, because clearly this is your own account. This is not from someone telling you what to say. And I think people would be interested to hear that.
Well, first of all, in the Western countries, the Netherlands, Germany, and so on, the war propaganda is very terrible. This started straight away in 2022. But nowadays it's amazing, terrible. If I hear my friends I have left, because like you, many friends deserted me. My own family thinks I'm, now working for the Russians. That's the enemy. So this is going on. And I think the propaganda is much worse even than in the US. They're really preparing for war in Europe.
Mhm.
And we all know now under the Trump administration that, yeah, there's a sort of peace negotiations. Let's put it this way. I don't think it's really successful because it's my personal opinion, a peace negotiation should be done between two parties. So Ukraine and Russia and the US and Europe, they can be on the table as well, just to negotiate. But this is, yeah, not what is happening. It's one-sided because Ukraine and Europe is not wanting to have peace. This is clear from a
Right.
long time already. And yeah, my
On
journey.
that, if I
Mm-hmm.
may, part of the problem is that we have this gigantic financial bubble of derivatives, and the arms
Mm-hmm.
sales are really part of it. And it struck me very intensely last night. I did an interview with Garland Nixon about why we should get rid of NATO. And I was thinking, they're committing to all these weapons that won't even be produced for 3 years, for 5 years. And then I realized, knowing how the markets work, they're not only selling weapons, they're selling derivatives on the weapons, right? On the future
Mm-hmm.
sales of weapons. And therefore, everything they are doing depends on this war continuing. And then you have things like the French, I forget the name of the guy, I think it's the equivalent of the Joint Chiefs in the US, who said, well, French people have to develop the soul to be willing to send their children to die in war. I mean, really crazy. So I think you're right. I think the propaganda in Europe is much more intense than in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And yeah, as for my country, the Netherlands, we have Mark Rutte. He was 13 years prime minister of the Netherlands and really destroyed the country, we can say in the end, because we had a very good country. The Netherlands is a rich country. But unfortunately, it's maybe the same situation as in the US. It's deteriorating. People without jobs, people have bills they cannot afford anymore, especially about the gas, of course, the
Yes.
heating bills and so on, the normal things that people should have in a developed country. And what about the weapon industry? It's very high. You have Rheinmetall in Germany. This was, well, it says already a company for metal working. Now it's, of course, like all other companies are built out to be weapon companies. And yeah, it's unbelievable in my opinion, it's unbelievable what they are doing now. And people are really, yeah, I think desperate. They want to go to the streets and demonstrate. You see this in Germany, but the Netherlands is, yeah, like the civilians are sleeping a little bit. This is what I think. But I think they will wake up somehow because when you when they go ahead with this, then it will come to the basic needs, and then people hopefully go to on the streets and try to do something. Because what we see now, to conclude it, is they want to go to war. And they say all the time we go next year, year after, but the purpose of the elites in Europe is to go to war without the US. It doesn't matter anymore for them because it's like that. They don't have negotiations, they don't have diplomacy, they have nothing anymore. The only rhetoric, and that's war.
Right.
Like today on X, you see it again. It's hopeless.
What are you referring to on X?
They had a meeting in Brussels
Oh,
again,
yes.
ministers of, yeah. So yeah, yeah. So and what came out actually was, well, we support Ukraine, we stand by Ukraine, and this the same propaganda what we hear every day. And
Wow.
they know Ukraine is losing. They know it, but they keep on going.
Yes, and I understand the American Secretary of State was not present. What I
Hmm.
find amazing is, do they really believe that they can carry out such a war without the United States joining them?
But I think they are, as how I call them all the time, so radicalized, and they are so. It's like a sect. They believe in this, it's like a mantra every day. Maybe they say it to themselves. I don't know when they wake up, but this is, you hear it, and it's like when we had the COVID time, they kept on also going, and you had
Right.
for distance, and all these things. So this is, I think some of them know that it's not possible to even maybe start a war or win a war against Russia, but they have no alternative. They preach this for 3 years, and the economy is very bad. The financial situation is very bad. It started also right after COVID. So, I mean, when they stop this now, this rhetoric about going to war, well, maybe the people look through it and they see, oh, wow, these people have lied to us all these years now, 3 years, and we cannot go even to war. What are they saying? So, this is, I think, and I guess, what keeps them going. And until now, they keep on going with this, yeah, war.
Well, now I'm sorry because I digressed, but please say what was happening in the Donbass when you got
Mhm.
there in 2022.
Okay, I went with the Russian military in 1 week after the start. So that was the beginning of March in 2022. I went to several cities. For me, the worst part was Mariupol. There, I was in April 2022, and the city was still under fire from the Ukrainians. So we were walking there in the city center, and we could hear the bombs with the grenades and so on. There was fighting at the port still. And when I was in the city center, we saw all the destroyed houses, and a lot of people were still there, especially
Now,
older
let me
people.
ask you because, of course, the
Mhm.
Ukrainians blame all of this on the Russians. So, who destroyed Mariupol?
I spoke to many civilians there, and they said Ukraine. And this was not only Mariupol, it was another city as well, Volnovakha, also destroyed. I spoke to the head teacher there, and from a school, it was, of course, destroyed as well. And the head of a hospital. So they declared to me that it was the Ukrainians because when they heard that the Russians came, because of course they knew after a while, then they destroyed the whole city. Well, at least the city center was destroyed. That's what I saw in Mariupol, Volnovakha, and of course I was in Kherson. That was where the dam, the hydraulic dam was,
Yes.
and that was destroyed also afterwards. I saw it when it was still okay, it was still working.
Well,
It was protected by the Russian army,
yeah.
but
Well, that
okay, didn't help.
doesn't seem like a very good strategy if you're trying to persuade people that they should be part of your country
No,
for
of
the
course not.
Ukrainians. Yeah.
No, no, it's and yeah, a lot of people, also Lysychansk, and yeah, many cities I was partly destroyed, and it was the same story all over again. That yeah, okay, it was the Ukrainians who retreated actually. So before they retreated, it's maybe what the tactics from Second World War Germany. They destroyed the city.
Mm,
This is what they did.
wow.
Hmm.
Now, is it the case, because what I understand is that when Russia began the special military operation, they did not send hundreds of thousands of troops. They were sending a message, and in fact, it seems to have been an effective message because only 3 to 4 weeks after it began, there were talks in Turkey between Ukraine and Russia, which could have ended the war at that point. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. Because I remember when I went in with the Russian army, I was close to Crimea. That's where was the point where we started from to go in. And it was not the whole Russian army. That was clear. So we went with them, and it was a fraction of the Russian army actually what went in. And I think the Russians themselves expected, okay, this is the message to Ukraine. If you go any further, then we are ready to go in more or with more troops, maybe. But yeah, okay. Then we had the peace negotiations in Turkey in 2022, and well, Boris Johnson from the UK and of course the other European leaders, they clearly said to Zelensky, not you don't sign any peace negotiation, or because we don't want you to have peace with Russia or peace. It was not exactly like that, but this is actually what it came to. So
Right.
But the Ukrainians were very happy. I heard that too from the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Luhansk, because he was there at the negotiations. And he told me that, oh, the champagne was already there, that, okay, we have peace, everything is settled. But yeah, it was not like that.
Wow, it's really so evil because so many Ukrainians have died since then. The figures I've heard are 1.7 or 1.8 million Ukrainian soldiers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, I heard that too. Of course, we don't know the exact amount of dead people, of dead soldiers, but also civilians. But I think it comes close, because they are losing so on the battlefield. It's very terrible. If you hear it, it's many people a day. But it's not only soldiers, it's also civilians. I mean, I heard that in the beginning as well, that the apartment blocks will bomb or grenade, whatever, and people died there in the cellars trying to hide for the
Right.
bombardments. So yeah, I think close to 1 million it should be for sure.
Right. And what were, if you could remind everyone, what were Russia's demands? What is their purpose in the special military operation? Because one thing that's been very striking, unlike the West, and even unlike President Trump, who says he wants to end the war, the Russians have been extremely consistent about their demands from the beginning of this even to this point now. And I do think that if the Americans involved in these negotiations would actually stop and consider what the demands of Russia have been the entire time, we could make a bit more headway on this process.
Well, one thing is for sure. I was there too, and there were democratic elections in the four republics. It was a referenda, and the people from these four republics, that was Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, they said for 90%, let's say about 90%, we want to be part of Russia. And so,
Now, you
okay,
know, okay, so this is what they said. You're a propaganda agent. This was
I
all
know,
rigged.
I
Everyone
know.
was going to be shot.
Yeah, but
But
I
you were
was there.
there.
Yeah,
And
I
that
was
was
there.
this, yeah. And it seems to me if you're getting bombed by the Ukrainian government, why would you want to continue to be part of Ukraine? I mean, I think people should consider that.
And also, people should consider in the West that these four provinces are mainly inhabited, or were, because many people now left, of course, because of the destruction. But these people were Russian speaking people. They felt Russian. A lot of elderly people still felt for the Soviet Union, or it's normal.
Mhm.
But the first thing is they felt Russian. And the people said to me, all of them, but also younger people, we don't have any opportunity when we are part of Ukraine. And also, I was visiting a lot of factories that time, or in cities, of course, who are not bombed. If you saw them, it's like it was the 1980s there. The factories still working. It was ah, horrible, actually, how the people worked there. So Ukraine got all this money from the European Union to renovate the roads, to the infrastructure, also the factories, and they didn't do anything with the money. So where did this money go to? We don't know. Maybe, you know, what we now found out, it's,
Right.
I don't know. But I want to say that there were no opportunities as well in Ukraine. So, and also they felt Russian. So why not be Russian? This is what the people told me. And also, they didn't want to be associated with the regime, what they call it, in Kiev, because according to them, they were right wing extremists. And we know that from the coup in Maidan in 2013, when the Azov and so on, you heard of that. So, this was what the people said in the Donbass.
Right. Yes, exactly. I know the New York Times actually admitted in one article that when the AP photographs would take photos of the Ukrainian soldiers on the front, they would ask them to please roll their sleeves down in order to hide the Nazi tattoos that they have
Mhm.
on their arms. Uh,
Yeah, I
so,
saw this.
yeah.
I was in the Azov steel plant 1 week after the liberation,
Mm,
and they had all these Azov battalion members captured. They had to take off their shirts, and you could see all their Nazi tattoos.
yeah.
So It's the evidence.
Right, exactly. So what is your sense of the dynamic now? And also, if you want to say anything about some of the provocations, because it seems to me that throughout this period, particularly British intelligence with the collusion of other NATO members, including, unfortunately, sometimes the United States, have been doing everything they can to provoke Russia, to try and get Putin to overreact, to do something precipitous that would give them an excuse to carry out further military actions. And now we have some Italian guy in NATO saying we should consider a preemptive nuclear strike on Russia. So what is the dynamic that's been going on here, and what about these provocations?
Well, I think the government of President Putin and President Putin himself are very pragmatic people, but also they have these goals to liberate the Donbass, and they know who is the enemy. The enemy is particularly Europe. Before it was the US.
Mm-hmm.
In some sense, maybe it's still also the US because there are a lot of hawks, of course, also in Trump's his administration. So they keep calm, actually. And we can see all the drones coming here every night. It's in all the regions, also sometimes in Moscow here, where I'm. But okay, people are continuing their normal way of life, go to work, school, and so on. So the people are quiet, and also the government. It's very, yeah, not nervous, or because they know they are winning in the Donbass. They know it, and the people are behind this government. And this is what you need when you are at war, because we all know here in Russia we are at war with the West, and also we know the peace negotiations going on, but a lot of people are also saying yes, but if the US really wants to have a peace with between Ukraine and Russia, then stop. Let not Europe buy weapons from the US,
Right.
because these weapons are going to Ukraine. So when you really want peace, you should say no to Europe. Don't buy any weapons because this is not helping to get peace. But okay, we know he likes deals in the US. So, but it's yeah, the people are here with the government, and the government is really it's, okay. They are handling it, in my opinion, very good with the people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, that's another rumor that people try to spread, that, oh, Putin is on his way out, he's going to be overthrown, nobody trusts him. What would you say to that?
No, no, no. I think this is just in their imagination. You know, it's there from the past when Assad had to go, Gaddafi had to go, and so on. This is what they are want, but this time they will not get it. I mean,
Right.
they kicked out Assad in the coup, and all the other ones, you know them as well. But the people are behind the government, not only Putin, but behind the whole government. And okay, this peace negotiations takes a long time, but Russia keeps its back straight and saying these are our goals, and US or Europe, Europe, we cannot speak with Europe anymore, but the US, you can say we need this, or we have the 28-point plan, or we have this plan, but these are our goals, and this is what we want to have, and you know, the special military operation started for this, and this is what will be the end of the operation.
Now, how close do you think that is? I know that Witkoff was there yesterday meeting with, or 2 days ago, meeting with Kirill Dmitriev and President Putin. It was 5 hours of talks. They said there were some advances. And then, of course, the press here said, well, but you know, Putin is so arrogant, he wouldn't compromise. And I'm thinking, you know, the Russians have been very clear from the beginning what their demands are, which are very reasonable, which is you don't ethnically cleanse the Russian-speaking people or their language. Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons. Ukraine does not join NATO. All of these things should be very obvious to Americans. I mean, we had a particular response when the Soviet Union put nuclear missiles in Cuba under Kennedy. It's obvious that no one wants to have nuclear missiles on their border from another or potentially hostile partner. But what is your sense about how this dynamic is going and the various nuances, and what do you think is required?
Well, I think real peace is not possible without Europe and, of course, Ukraine itself.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a good thing that there are renewed relations with the US because they were not there since 3 or 4 years. So that's always bad because two nuclear powers don't have any relations, canceling the START treaty and so on. So that's not very good. So I think this is a big advantage, and it also means that Russia, the government or Putin, uh, wants to communicate and wants to find a solution for what is going on in Ukraine right now. But yeah, the big problem is Europe and Ukraine itself. And if Europe starts supporting Ukraine, I think then it will be finished very quickly because the Russian army, what I said before, is advancing very quickly now. We have now Pokrovsk, the
Right.
liberation, that's what they call in the West, like that, and keep on going. And maybe Odessa, we don't know, but okay, see that in the future. But if there are negotiations, I think they can speak about anything. But now the West and also the US wants an armistice there, and this is not going to happen
Right.
because Russia will say, and this is what they are right about. Look, if we do that, Europe is going to rearm, or maybe the US is going to rearm the Ukrainian army, and that's very bad.
Right.
And that's the problem of NATO, of course, we still have surrounding Russia.
Yes, that's exactly the case. Well, I think this time has gone very fast and we should be wrapping up soon. But
Okay.
Putin has called for a new security architecture. As you're saying, it has to include all of Europe. This is very much like what Helga Zepp-LaRouche at the Schiller Institute has been. We need an entirely new paradigm of relations. Xi Jinping calls it win-win. We can abandon this crazy imperial model where somebody always has to be the global hegemon and rather have an equal participation of sovereign nation states who respect each other. Do you think that's pie in the sky?
Well, I think we are in the beginning. I mean, the BRICS was the beginning, and a
Yes.
lot of countries are joining BRICS. And of course, a multipolar world would be very good because there's no world hegemony from or the US or Europe. This is, I think, in the past. And
Mm-hmm.
this is exactly what is Europe struggling with because they were the power together with the US. But the US, I think, said goodbye a little bit to that. But Europe is not because they think they are superior. They are, had all these colonies,
Right.
especially Britain everywhere. So, I mean, this is the whole problem. And when we have very good, I mean, not very good, but when we get normal, good politicians who understand that their world is not their world anymore, that it's a different world, a multipolar world, then maybe we see towards peace or, yeah, a good world, a better world. But I think it's a long way at the moment. I hope not, but I think so.
A long way, but I think we're moving there. I think,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, I would
Hmm.
like to thank you very much. Is there anything that I didn't ask you or anything you want to say before we conclude?
No, I think it's you tackled all the topics, and yeah, let's again. Let's hope Europe will come to its senses, and also the US will be stop supplying weapons to Europe so they can send it to Ukraine.
Yes,
That's actually the whole point that the war will finish.
I agree very much. Well, thank you so much, and I hope we talk again soon.
So that was the interview of 2 days ago. I think really delightful, and we'll see how this progresses. If you have not listened to the Schiller Institute's International Peace Coalition call today, former CIA analyst Ray McGovern said that he believes after the 5-hour discussion between Witkoff, Kirill Dmitriev, and Putin that the glass is half full. And he said, which I think many people struggle with, it's hard to imagine that President Trump wants peace between Russia and Ukraine when he's presided over so many atrocities in Gaza. Israel still seems to have a green light to kill people with impunity. The murdering of people in little boats in the Caribbean, Venezuela, the treatment of immigrants, migrants in the United States. There are many things that are very ugly, but it does seem that the president is committed to this, and we have gotten some of the warmongers out of the way, namely Rubio and Kellogg. So perhaps this can move ahead. And at any rate, this development between Russia and India is huge. If you have Russia, India, and China together, that's an enormous land area. That's an enormous powerhouse of production, scientific research, and it's frankly just stupid of the United States to want to be an adversary of that process as opposed to being part of a dynamic for a new economic architecture. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I presume we will be here again next week, and I did put it in the chat under YouTube, but for everybody, please sign up for a recurring monthly donation to the LaRouche organization. If you do $10 per month or more, you will get the Executive Intelligence Review Daily Alert, and everybody should be reading that now. You just simply can't stay on top of the strategic developments without it. So we'll talk to you soon. Listen to your Palestrina and Beethoven and Mozart.